long have you stared at that blank screen trying to figure out how to showcase years of work in a single case study? If you're anything like me, trying to put together your portfolio can feel incredibly overwhelming, even if you do have decades of experience. And whether you're dealing with NDAs, enterprise projects, or even work that never saw the light of day, you're in luck. Get ready for some real, actionable advice that will turn your UX journey into a story worth telling. What's up, UX fam? How's your mom and them? Welcome to another episode of Beyond UX Design. I'm Jeremy. If you're new here, welcome. I am super stoked. Have you picked up your paperback copy of Beyond UX Design, Master Your Craft Beyond Pixels and Prototypes yet? Unlock the secrets of UX success and learn all the things I didn't teach you in school. Get free shipping on all orders over $30 and use the code LISTENER to get 10% off your entire order. Head on over to beyonduxdesign.com/book to learn more. And if you haven't done it already, please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you are regular here and you feel like you're getting something out of the show, I would really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review. That would help me out so much more than. And as always, thanks so much to Chris, Siraquan, Stacy, Radu, Megan, Andrew, John, Mark, Kevin, Jason, Michelle, Marty, Tino, Adina, and Zoe for all their support. And if you want to join these fine folks and many others and help keep the show independent and ad-free, you'll get exclusive access to the entire video library of episodes, including episodes before they're even released. You can get instant access to those videos right now for as little as $5 a month. And for more information on how you can support the show and help more people find out about what we're doing, make sure to check out beyonduxdesign.com/support. And of course, if you think the show is worth sharing, then for the love of God, tell your mom and them. Writing case studies, for me at least, is one of the most stressful things I think I do as a UX designer. It's the pressure's on. You got to get this right. You're not going to get a job if you don't put together this quote-unquote perfect portfolio. And so I am so excited to have my good friend Aneta Kmiecik on the show twice now, joining a very exclusive club of other Beyond UX Design two-timers. So Aneta, I am so excited to have you on the show. Ex-architect turned UX designer with 13 years of creative experience and founder of Be Your Own Design Team, where she helps designers navigate their UX careers through her flagship course on UX portfolios. And it's perfect timing, Aneta, because this is something I think so many people are thinking about right now. We got a lot of people getting laid off and they're looking for work. This portfolio thing, for me, incredibly stressful.
Yes, I know.
So I'm excited to have you come on and talk about it today. How are you? How's it going? Welcome to Beyond UX Design.
Thank you so much for inviting me the second time. I'm super humbled to be here. So super happy about chatting about portfolios.
Exactly. I am so excited to have you on, and I was practicing before how to say that in Polish, and I completely forgot, and so I'm not even going to try. But
you have pronounced the name very well, so really congrats.
Yeah, I learned last time. Kmiecik.
Yes.
See, the thing is with Polish, there's barely any vowels, so it's like all the consonants in a row. Kmiecik.
Yes.
I guess there's one little vowel in there, but anyway. All right, let's see. We did the Polish. Cześć, so słychać. That's all the Polish I know.
We practiced before the show.
Oh, sandwich. I love it. Duolingo is so funny because every single language they use apple and sandwich.
Yeah.
And so I know how to say apple and sandwich in 6 different languages, but that's about it.
But it's still good. You can survive. You can at least order food. So in this country,
I can at least ask for an apple or a sandwich.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So Aneta, portfolios. This is something. It's a nebulous thing. You're gonna go online, LinkedIn, and you're gonna see just 1,000 different people giving advice on portfolios. And I have to be honest. I think your advice is some of the most solid and actionable, and I think worthwhile examples of advice for portfolios out there. So first, thank you for being around and having us learn from you. I really appreciate it. We're all better off for that. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not following Aneta on LinkedIn and Instagram, she posts quite a bit about that. She's also got a newsletter, and we're going to pick her brain today and get some actionable advice on portfolios. So last time we had you on, you gave us the background and all that stuff, moving from architecture to UX design. I still think that's such a fascinating move. So if you want to find out more about Aneta, go check out the last episode. I can't even remember. It was a while ago.
It was a while. Yeah, it was.
It was a while ago. You've now put together a course, and like I said, you have a newsletter. You talk about this all the time. I'm curious, just how did you get into this realm of just understanding portfolios? Did you just have a terrible experience with your own portfolio, learn from that? Or like, how did you become such a master at putting together portfolios?
Yeah, I'm not so sure if I'm a master, but I've been spending a lot of time on this topic. I feel like I had a chat before our call with another designer, and I was actually telling him that I think my passion for portfolios came out from pain, because when I was an architect, I had to create a portfolio as well. So I actually spent a lot of time on creating portfolios in those different industries. And in design, it wasn't different initially. I struggled a lot as well, like with understanding, okay, how to explain the why, what is storytelling, or like how to brush up my images, or how to deal with NDAs. Ultimately, when I started helping designers and doing content, I've realized that this topic is quite challenging for many. So I decided to dig deeper, and I basically did a lot of research about this as well. Manager, but I'm not a hiring manager myself. So I spent a lot of hours, I don't know, more than 1,000 on chatting with hiring managers, designers, reading and learning about storytelling. And I must say, I also have learned a lot tips from content creation, because I read a lot about Link, and I think this contributed a lot to my knowledge and my own portfolio as well. So this is how I came here, and I've been helping designers with those topics for a while. Yeah, here I am. I did this course. I hope I can share as many insights as possible in this short time today.
Hell yeah, I love it. One thing that I think is just important for everybody to understand, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, but this is something I tell people a lot, is it's really frustrating, especially people, veteran designers, people who have a long career.
Yeah.
We do all the work. We're really good at doing the work. And often when it comes to, let's say I get laid off and I need a job. This happened to me in December 2023. I had just years and years of experience and I do all the work, but guess what never actually gets updated? It's the portfolio. And all that stuff, it's one of those things where it tends to be that last minute thing that you just don't think about until you need it. And I want to hear your perspective on this, but I'm curious. One of the things the way I like to think about it is being good at UX design doesn't necessarily mean you're good at putting a case study together. I feel like those are sometimes two different skills. I'm curious your thoughts there. Like, how do you feel about that when you think about veteran designers, especially, and doing really great work?
Yeah.
Putting that portfolio together. You have any thoughts there?
Yeah.
That pinpoint.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, that's a very good observation. I feel like probably for a very long time you could deal with any form of a portfolio setup. Like you could send an email at some point. You could just share a link to your portfolio in any format possible without much storytelling or, I don't know, high quality visuals. Sometimes it was through referrals or something like this, right? Whereas right now when the market is very competitive, it's very hard to go through with a mediocre portfolio. And then when people realize, okay, there's actually more to a portfolio than just copying and pasting artifacts or project data, like raw data. I feel like we are lacking skills, which is nothing surprising since we are not writers. If we talk about like UX designer, service designer, I don't know, or other roles like research, we are not writers. No one taught us how to write, to use storytelling, what it is. And also many of us actually don't work on those flashy designs and products. Because oftentimes when we go online, check portfolios, we see those beautiful. I also share these portfolios because they're available. They're flashy, like a lot of animations, micro interactions, whereas there are people coming from, I don't know, enterprise, B2B, I don't know, governmental stuff or other topics that are on the NDA and then don't have it as well. So then it's the question, okay, how should I make my portfolio stand out? And then they also, of course, struggle with this. So there is no surprise that we struggle with this at this point, even after being in the industry, because those things are two different things.
Yeah, that's a really good observation too. And something that I've heard you say a few times in posts, I wonder if you could maybe speak to this too, is keeping that work journal as you're doing the work. Even it's not necessarily putting case studies together, but just keeping track of the things that you're doing. I wonder if you could just touch on that a little bit, because if you don't have that over the course of 3-4 years, suddenly you need to go put the case study together and you're trying to think back, what the hell did I do 3 years ago in this thing? Tell me about that. How do you like to give that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm screwing this up.
Yeah, I think that we all know that this work journaling is super important, but on the other hand, it's so difficult to You are swamped with your own work and you need to like document some shit. But it's important because when you, for instance, get laid off, you can lose access to all your files. Secondly, it's not remembering things. Folks, to just do a bare minimum. So for at least save your files regularly and don't note down really key things. I don't know what problem you are right now solving in this project. You don't need to write poems because ultimately you also don't necessarily need to write case studies because the portfolio doesn't equal a case study. It can be something else as well. So I think it's more about being aware of, okay, what problem I solved, how I solved it, why I solved it that way, the impact, that's it. And for saving files so that you can have the visual representation of what you have done. And what is the solution for this? I don't know. Maybe we will have soon some AI tools that can magically transform our project information to a beautiful file. I'm probably not aware yet about this, but even like a basic stuff, I don't know, opening your Google Doc, opening your Apple Notes, opening Notion, whatever tool you will pick, and just throwing those things there in a few bullet points. It's already, you are way ahead of many designers.
Yeah, that's true. I definitely give that advice, and I can't tell you how seldom I actually follow my own advice.
I know how it is. I know.
It gets so overwhelming. But I think that's something to think about. It's like, what's the opportunity cost? The way I think about it, at least, is like, what's the opportunity cost of not doing this?
Yeah.
And especially if you need a job, you're already stressed out most likely. You're probably worrying about bills and 1,000 other things. The way I see it is, and again, I need to practice what I preach, but the way I see it is doing that little thing, it's a pain in the ass right now, but it's going to save you that much from stress later, because I hate to say this, but it's only a matter of time before you get laid off. Yeah. Our jobs are not safe. Even cushy corporate jobs are not someplace you're going to work for 20 years and retire.
Yeah.
So that idea, I feel like that's so important.
Yeah. I can maybe give another tip. At least this is my strategy, and I usually advise others to do the same. Block time in your calendar, I don't know, on Friday, 9 a.m. for 15 minutes that you will document have done during this week. That's it. This would be some screenshots, because I sometimes also do. Okay, I don't have a mental energy to write down anything about the problem I solve or whatsoever, even like screenshots for context so that I can pick up something from this later.
Yeah, that's great advice. Do you have a way to organize this stuff? Because after like a year,
you've
got just lists and things. Is there a way that you like to organize all these things?
I have.
Later when you come back?
Yeah, I have my, some folks call it project documentation. That doesn't matter. Anyway, I have a Notion file for this. I am a big Notion file fan just because it's very close to my way of thinking as an architect. But I have different categories. I tag, for instance, okay, was it a B2C, B2B project? Was it, I don't know, a product to market fit? Was it like a SaaS? I try to categorize those stuff. I always have a column for the problem, and I have a separate for user and business problem. And then I also have impact that is also categorized in different columns. Okay, impact on product, impact on people, on processes, because sometimes you have, I don't know, for instance, if you're going through difficult work environments, you might have impacted processes, improved them. These are also things that are worth noting down. If I have time, I have those notes inside the page of the projects. And I also try to not name the project as it was at work. For instance, if I was working on, I don't know, a checkout project as an example, I usually try to name this file more impactful and insightful so that I can know which job to be done it was for a user that I helped with, and I to put this title there. But honestly, I think any form of documentation will be fine. Some people don't feel comfortable with this type of more complex setup. I think can be really enough.
Anything is better than nothing. Even if you've just got like a mess of text files.
Yes.
It's still better than zero.
Yeah.
It's still better than absolutely nothing. Just do it. I feel like I'm one of these people that's going to set the Friday thing and just snooze it, and just 6 months in and I'm like, shit, I haven't done this once. It's one of those things. I feel like putting that on there is still a good reminder. And if anything, if you're like me, snoozing that reminder will just make you feel guilty, so that at least 6 months later you'll do it, as opposed to 3 years or never. So I like that advice of giving the stuff. So let's talk about like actually getting to write the actual case study. I want to get your opinion on this.
Yeah.
And this is something that I tell people, and I'm curious if this is maybe the right way to approach it or not. But I often feel like UX designers, especially, will put together a portfolio or case study or website and all the things on their website. and they'll put the things they think they want to see, and they'll put the things that they think other people want to see. But very rarely do we actually treat our own website, case studies, portfolio like any other UX project that we're working on, meaning we don't think about the people using it on the other end, the humans, the actual users. And so we'll design it for ourselves, but we say we're not the user all the time. But when it comes to our case studies, we very rarely think that way. And one of the things that I like to tell people is do your research, understand who your users are, and design your case studies for them and the things they want to see, not the things you think are important. And I'm curious your thoughts there. That's obviously easier said than done, because how often do we get an opportunity to actually talk to a recruiter or a hiring manager at the places we want to work? We usually don't get that opportunity, but easier said than done. But I'm curious your thoughts there. Is that something that's actually a reasonable thing to say, or is that really just really hard to do because you don't get access to those people?
Yeah. I think that's a very good observation. And at least from what I've researched and have heard from different hiring managers and my own experience with hiring, I think it's very true that we ultimately forget about these users, hiring managers, recruiters, also other people, because sometimes it's also a designer who review a portfolio of helping out, or someone else, like even a product manager, depending on a company setup, which is very natural, because it's you kind of, for a very long time, I think we were separating portfolios for, it was okay, whatever, I will put something together, it will be fine. Whereas the market is right now so competitive. That's why I think we have started talking about this. And I think it's in a sense good, because we as UX designers, we actually should always think about this end user. Okay, it's not for me. If I would have to create a portfolio for myself, I would rather prefer to, I don't know, go out and meet with my friends than put this portfolio. So we need to think about a portfolio as a business tool that hiring managers, recruiters, everyone who is involved in the hiring process used to make a decision, and is to actually help them make this decision about us. So we need to provide them all the information they need to make this decision quicker, because if they would do it quicker, it will be easier for them. They will be more fulfilled and happy about how you have set up your portfolio. There is a clear pattern about this portfolio review, right? It's not, of course, every opinion is different in a sense. It's no surprise. I think sometimes we get frustrated. Everyone is telling those different opinions, right? I think you initially in the beginning of the podcast, but every user is different. We can't make an impact on this, but we can think about those common patterns that are when reviewing your portfolio. Like the initial review, we can already, I think, all know that it's probably very quick if there are so many designers on the market, right? So you need to optimize for time to value. You also need to think of the journey that in which your portfolio goes through. Okay, am I sending this portfolio? How? Is it attached and available in a resume? Am I sending this through a referral, a DM? You need to think about all those different journeys that hiring managers will have with your portfolio. Also inside your portfolio, like navigation and stuff, right? And then how you provide them this information so that they can quickly make this decision. And ultimately, if someone is sharing a different opinion about the portfolio, I think it's also a very natural thing, because every user is different, right? So a hiring manager hiring for one company and another hiring manager hiring for another company, no surprise that they might have specific different needs, right? So this is something we can't influence.
Yeah, I love the call out, though, that everybody's got different opinions, but at the same time, there are universals that you should apply.
Yeah, like
right?
behavior.
Yeah, and I wonder if you could maybe speak to that a little bit. When it comes to comparing and contrasting the things that should be the same versus the things that might be different. I'm trying to think of how to word this question to make it more specific, because it's so broad. But like, I'm thinking about this. Obviously, we're going to talk about some of the universal things in a second. But when it comes to understanding those things, I'm thinking about like industry. For instance, if I'm going into healthcare, I might want to say and do and show certain things versus a commercial mobile startup or something that's building commercial apps for the iPhone. So I'm curious, do you have any thoughts about how to figure that part out so that you can apply those things to speak to that specific industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a whole module about this in my portfolio course. Strategizing your designer profile is how we call it. No, I think some people call it designer identity. Because you don't have access to those hiring managers, you can, of course, chat, but at some point you probably can't talk with those that will be reviewing your portfolio. At this stage, you can probably think about common behavioral patterns and how the reviewing process can look like. But to make this decision process easier, I think the key is to prepare your portfolio, optimize for time to value, This means that you need to put the most important information for a hiring manager quickly in your portfolio so that they can quickly see it and make this decision and move on. And to know what type of information to put there up front, you need to know yourself. To also things like you need to reflect on who you are as a designer, what is your experience, and where you want to go next. I think this is often a missing part. Like we think that we need to put together a portfolio from what we have done so far. Find this connection. You need to, first of all, think about, like you said, like a designer, do research. Okay, what I have done, what type of projects, can I see any pattern? Use those UX technique, I don't know, affinity mapping, whatever, to find the patterns. And you as a designer, know your skills. I don't know, use some sort of skill mapping exercise. You can Google it. There are those maps that you can check out. You can even take some personality tests if you are super not aware of who you are, also from this soft skill perspective. And then you need to really think about your next move, because then you will to check, for instance, descriptions of job offers and try to think how I can best communicate my skills so that they can see that I am a good fit for this role.
Yeah. I love that, the idea of thinking inward first, and before you can share yourself, you
Yeah.
have to know thyself first. I love that. That's very deep.
It's very tricky, I would say.
Yeah, it is not easy. One of the things I want to call out that you said, I love that. I want to maybe dig into this a little bit, but your portfolio and your case studies should not be written to show what you have done. It's to show what you can do and to get that next job. And so I'm thinking off the top of my head, if I'm an individual contributor and I'm trying to get a lead role, I don't need to necessarily show as much of the tactical, hands-on work. I want to maybe show more of the strategy and how I delegated or how I led the team to this thing.
Absolutely.
As opposed to every little tidbit. That's really interesting. I've actually been recently talking to several managers who are trying to get back into IC roles because they aren't really happy as managers, and they want to get their hands dirty again. And so all their work is like from the manager perspective. And now they're putting a manager case study together, talk about how you help solve problems at a very high level is not going to get you an individual contributor role because people don't necessarily know if you can do that work. And so I love that idea of crafting your case study around the next job, not the one that you have done. That's a really great point. I also want to call out something you just said. It's like, this is for the next job. It doesn't necessarily have to be your entire career. Yep. So this is something I think, and I want to get your thoughts here. I have seen so many people, especially people that have had 10 years of experience. I was talking to somebody the other day who had something like 15 or 20 case studies on their website. And to me, my initial reaction was, God, this is very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get your thoughts here. As someone who maybe has been working for 10 years and has done a lot of things. In this case, this person was a contractor, so almost every 6 months to a year, they were jumping to a new project. So they had all this work, which is great. But I'm curious, when it comes to that next role, what is your advice to people who might have just too much stuff?
Yeah.
It's like the opposite problem of having nothing, but just too much stuff. Is there a way that you can advise them to pick and choose? Is there a magic number as far as like how many to show? I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I love this question about the number. Sometimes designers ask me this and I am like, there's no magic number. I know that give this advice, but I think it's a lie because there's nothing like one number for number of case studies because you build this with quality. Like you start with quality first and you build on top of those things. So showing 20 case studies or project stories or I don't know, whatever you call them, ask yourself, okay, is this last case study from which year? Is it relevant? Is it still up to date? Does it show the same way of solving problems and possibilities that we have right now, because tech is very dynamic that we are seeing this literally right now. The relevance and the timeline as well, and actually prioritize this content. I know that sometimes we are scared that, okay, I even had a chat once with a designer. She told me, but Aneta, I want to show this all because I want to be on the safe side. The problem is that there is no safe side. So you need to take the risk. Tell designers, you need to become the boss of your portfolio and take this ownership and take this decision and this risk. Okay, maybe this time you will, I don't know, set up a portfolio in this way with this project. Maybe it will fail, maybe it will not. I don't know. But the next time you can change. It's not like set in stone. If you have 20 projects, no one will even go through all of those projects. From hiring managers, these are just raw insights right now. That when they see so many projects that they feel like a bit, oh, you haven't put the work into prioritizing. I don't know which projects are relevant. Or is it like an old portfolio from a few years ago? And have time to go through this and check it. You need to provide them upfront. This is who I am. This is what I can do for you. This is what type of value I can deliver. So the best way to do portfolio right now is to actually prioritize your content, because putting this all together, throwing it like a report, it won't work.
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about in this example was taking maybe 3. I don't know. 3 is a nice round number. People like to throw around. Or maybe 1.
Start from 1.
Yeah, start from 1.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we talked about having a hero section where it's this one's really big. And then beneath that, maybe 2 or 3 others that are maybe in 3 columns underneath that sort of speak to that next job. And then from there, like, the funny thing is, like, as designers, again, we don't think about the usability of our own websites.
Oh yeah.
Like, you don't have to put 1,000 case studies on the homepage. Like, you could have each one could have related case studies, and you could think about the information architecture of your own website. It doesn't have to be like just a list of 1,000 things on there, because it's overwhelming and people aren't going to scroll through it. And so anyway, I love that. Focus on one first. Just focus on the best one.
Yeah.
This is something I want to get your opinion here. And I know you're not necessarily a hiring manager, but one of the things that I like to tell people, and I want to know what you think here, but your website, and thinking about the purpose of your website, it's a tool in your toolkit to get a job. There's many different ways that you could get a job.
Yes.
A portfolio is not going to be, or I'll say this, your website is not going to be the reason why someone offers you the job. Yeah. It's generally there to get your foot in the door, have a conversation, and the interview and the presentation and the deck and the portfolio piece that you go through is going to be what ultimately decides if you get the job or not. And I'm curious, are we overthinking case studies and websites? Are we overthinking these things and saying, it's got to be perfect, it's got to have everything, it's got to tell my entire story, otherwise I won't get the job? I feel like a lot of designers, we overthink our own website, thinking it has more weight than it might actually have. And obviously it's important, but it's to get the foot in the door. It's not going to be the ultimate thing. I'm curious what you think. Do you think that's a good way to think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a good observation. But it's also very natural, because it's our own product, the best one. We want to show ourselves from the best side. And we are really stressed, especially imagine, like, you've been through this. I've been through this as well, like being laid off and suddenly you don't have anything. So you are super stressed. You don't know what will be next, if you will find a job. So you are in this loop and you try to put something together in the best manner. Then when you start to overthink, I think it's very natural, because you start to panic a bit. On the other hand, if you don't get this foot into the door, you won't get another opportunity. It's also natural that we stress because of those 2 reasons. But I think that we overthink in that sense that we are afraid of putting this portfolio out there. We think that the portfolio is a website. Necessarily. We have these mental models that were built, I think, based on what has been industry. And we try to, I don't know, pass a school test maybe, I don't know. But in a sense, I think there is a truth in this. Whereas we can question this and we can approach this as a designer and we can design this and really think intentionally, okay, do I need to create a website? What are my constraints? Is my job for my next role, do I need this flashy animations? Like all those questions that you normally would ask yourself on a project, on the job. Whereas when you create a portfolio, you panic and you just throw stuff together and you just follow the crowd.
Following the crowd. Yes.
I think this is the biggest. So we need to, okay, this is my portfolio and I will really think through what I'm putting there. Like really, I'm talking about like the words, the setup, everything, the format.
I love that. And you just said something about not following the crowd. And I want to dig into this. This sort of begs the question, like, what are people doing wrong?
Yeah.
And I've got a whole section that we're going to talk about, if we have time today, about tips and tricks and actionable advice. So I feel like it's one of those things, like we could probably talk for 5 hours just about this. I've got like a ton of questions about actionable advice and things like that. We might not get into today. We could talk about in our live event next week. But one of the things I want to dig in before we get into that is just the things that you're seeing that you wish people would just stop doing. So you mentioned following the crowd and just hopping on the trends, but that sort of, to me, begs the other question. What else are people doing wrong that you're seeing constantly? Before we get into the stuff that they should do and how they might handle differences, what I'm curious is there just things that you just see constantly and you're just like, oh my God, for the love of Christ, stop doing that.
Yeah, I think the following the crowd covers a lot of those topics. One, because we forget to think. We forget to critically think about our own situation because we think that there is a golden formula out there to get this job. The golden formula for creating a portfolio, whereas there is nothing like this, to be honest, because every designer is different. That we are coming with we have different skill sets. We are applying to different roles and different people are reviewing our portfolios. And we are going through this recruitment process that can have also some differences in the process. So there's no golden formula. That's why it's so important to focus on actually building a clear profile and clear portfolio in a very consumable time to value way, so that you can actually be seen. Because if some typical issues that when you follow the crowd are, for instance, doing what you actually shouldn't do in your position, right? Like, for instance, okay, I have those NDAs, I don't know how to show them, or I don't have visual design skill. Maybe this is a good example. But everyone is doing this flashy turning around mobile applications on their side, on scroll, parallel, whatever. You need to stop then and think, okay, what should I do next? Is it for me? Is it something that will show me for the role I am applying for? This, for instance. Of course, not designing your portfolio is a big one. Not thinking about the information architecture that you had actually mentioned. This is a big one, like overcomplicating the navigation in a portfolio and general complicating portfolio is a big thing. Like, we pick sometimes some weird complex templates from those no-code tools, and then we are surprised that we actually don't need all of those things. Sometimes it's just a landing page. Maybe you don't even need to have this website. If, for instance, you are short on time, you don't have web design skills, everything is under NDA, so you have a lot to think through. Whereas, for instance, maybe you want to apply tomorrow. So then you need to think about the constraints you have and decide, as a designer, what's the best decision in those constraints. Prioritize based on your situation. So I think these are the main issues, like the top level one. Of course, there are some concrete one when it comes to setting up the portfolio, but these are the first one that I've been seeing, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Something else before we get into some of these tips and tricks. You mentioned before, and I want to circle back to this and get your thoughts here. You mentioned something about it might not have to be a case study. You might be able to do other things. When people think about explaining work that they have done in the past and showing it off, they always default to the case study.
Yeah.
Problem statement, I did this, showing some artifacts, blah, blah, blah. But what are other things that you could use to highlight past work that might not be what we think of as a traditional case study?
Yeah. I think it comes to the things I've said already. You need to critically think about your situation and what you need to communicate. Okay, if they don't have time, if we talk about this online or this portfolio that you send for the first touch point, not a case study presentation, it needs to be optimized for a quick scanning. It needs to be very readable. It needs to be optimized for time to value. No one will go through this in details. Maybe later on in the process, when they are mulling over between two candidates or three, they can come back to your portfolio. But at this stage, you just want to make an impression and inform hiring manager about your profile and help them make decisions, answer the questions that they have. Another setup that you might have is, for instance, create a landing page with things that I call in my portfolio calls project snapshots. They're like short stories about projects, about problems actually that you solved. Because another thing is that many times designers think that, okay, portfolio equals case study, a list of case studies. And another common misconception is that a case study equals my one work project. And it can be true in some cases, but if you've been working in complex work environments and product setups, it's probably not true. Because project after, 2 years in one case study, it's like overwhelming as hell, right? So then you need to break it down. That's why I feel like, okay, maybe one problem. And then based on this problem, you can create a short snapshot about how you solved this project, what you achieved, and give like a visual representation. The visual representation is very important, even if you are a UX researcher or, a person who wasn't involved in UI stuff or visual stuff, because it just helps users, hiring managers, see it quicker and understand it quicker, a first impression. You can always credit a designer who was responsible for this shot if you are, for instance, a UX researcher. or like annotate. It's okay to share those stuff. We all do it when you write a book, when you create a course. I also link to some stuff that was created not by me. But that's okay. But I think this visual and a short snapshot from key information, the problem, the change you made, the transformation, and the impact is the most important. And of course, on top of and how you will set this up, the format, it's really up to you. I think the landing page is enough. It can be a PDF if you are like strict on time. And also another thing is that you can build on top of this. So for instance, for a first iteration, you can create a project snapshot, but maybe tomorrow you can write a case study. And also you need to think, okay, how much proof actually I need to provide to a hiring manager to believe me that I can do it? As maybe a question can also help you, because if you are more junior, then it's very difficult to provide more proof and write this case study because you don't have an experience. Senior, you have your resume speaks for itself already. You need to provide the snapshot of those projects and problem you solve. And you can elaborate more on this also later on in a case study presentation, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of the snapshot. I was actually talking with a coaching client a couple of weeks ago. She worked at a healthcare company for several years and had one big product that she worked on, but she had multiple case studies that she broke up. And one of the things that we were playing around with was this idea of a landing page for that product. And so there was a hero case study at the top, and then there were other little case studies at the bottom. The idea there is if she were to be working or applying for a healthcare role, she could send that as like the landing page for her case studies, because all that work really applies to another healthcare company. But she's also applying to some other more tech startups that do more commercial stuff. That probably is going to turn them off because it's a lot of desktop stuff. It doesn't really have any mobile. It's not as quote unquote sexy as some of the other stuff she's done. And so we talked about doing a landing page for some of the other mobile apps and the more commercial facing apps that she's done. And so it's like, if I'm applying for that one in the portfolio link, I might put this one and then the other. So she's creating like which is very similar to what marketing companies will do when they have a product. They have the exact same product, the exact same data, but they're selling to 14-year-old boys. They're going to have a landing page that speaks to those 14-year-old boys. And then if they're trying to sell to 60-year-old women, they're going to have a landing page that speaks to 60-year-old women. And they're going to use those different links in different places. So that marketing journey is going to be very different for those two. But the data is the same. The visuals might even be the same, but the words they use and how they explain it and talk about it are going to be very different. So anyway, that was something we're playing around with. And I love that idea of the snapshot. Especially, I'm thinking you've got like maybe a longer case study. You could put a little snapshot up at the top as like a header. And then you want more information, fine. Because that's the thing I think about. We often try to just have a one-size-fits-all thing for a case study, but there's going to be different people viewing it that want different things. So if you can provide them that quick snapshot TLDR at the top, that's enough. But then if somebody wants more information, they can scroll down and read. When you can have an appendix and link to artifacts and things, it doesn't mean you have to necessarily have every single sticky note that you ever put on a wall for that project in your case study. It's funny because I was actually, back when I was working at GE, we were interviewing for a new role, and me and another guy were doing the panel. We were running the panel to hire, and said we were reviewing the case studies, and I said, I just don't really need to see all this information. It's just kind of information overload. And he was like, really? I read every single sticky note. And I was like, are you serious, dude? It's even for that same job, two different people that are reviewing the case studies were looking for very different things. And I think that's just speaks to what you said a second ago, that everybody that's looking at this is different. And having that sort of one size fits all thing, I think doesn't necessarily work. So thinking about this, these snapshots and all this stuff, one thing I want to talk about before we get into the tips and tricks, and I don't even know, we might not even have time for specific tips and tricks. We might have to save that for our Q&A. But for platforms, I want to talk about platforms, because we could talk about what to put and how to write it and all that stuff, but if you can't get it out there in the world for people to see, what's the point? So the platforms, everybody's using 1,000 different things. I've seen everything from just PDFs being emailed all the way to like custom built websites and everything in between. If you're like me, old dinosaur, you're still using WordPress, people are using Wix, people are using Framer, people are using Figma, everything in between. I'm curious, like when you think about platforms, what's your advice there? How do you go about giving advice for individuals when they're deciding on how to actually publish this stuff?
Again, very good question. I think I've said a few things about it already. I usually advise people to start thinking about their situation. Okay, where I am right now, what are my constraints? Do I know how to do web design? Have I ever done a website, even using a no-code tool? do I want to apply tomorrow? Do I have anything? Have I written already some stories? Do I have those snapshots? Do I know my elevator pitch, like my profile? Like you need to work within your constraints to make this decision about the tool that you will be using, because the tool, until it's user friendly, up until it's accessible and available for hiring manager, it's okay. I think it doesn't matter. Of course, the problem starts when you select a tool that you can't handle and that it creates a very clunky experience and it actually makes an issue for a hiring manager to review your portfolio quickly. Then the platform can cause some issues. But initially, I think you need to start with asking yourself those questions that I already told you, right? Okay, can I do it? For instance, once in my career, okay, maybe it was more actually, but I remember once I saw a job offer, I think it was Friday, and the deadline for application was on Monday. As you can guess, I didn't have any portfolio, at least not updated. I think I had a PDF version. So I had to decide, okay, I'm going to right now put together my website and like stress over some interface things in this platform, or will I focus on telling my story and actually delivering my portfolio to try it out if I get this interview? So this is how you make those decisions. If you actually want to do your website, I have my preferences and I know how it looks like in general, but I think if you feel comfortable working in WordPress, it's probably okay for you if the experience, right? The experience is okay. But if you're just starting out, yeah, there are some few that are probably easier to start with, like based on that you are a designer.
Yeah, I love that, because what I usually tell people too is do whatever you feel comfortable with. If it's a custom built website and you feel like you can knock that out and it's not extra stress on you, do that. If you are more comfortable with Wix, if you're more comfortable with WordPress or anything else, like use that. The thing that I advise people not to do is don't go and try to learn a new platform and then get stuck and not be able to update it because you couldn't figure out how to do it or it didn't do the thing you wanted it to do. Just use the one that you're comfortable with and the one that you can actually materialize the thing that you visualized in your head. If you can't make it look or function the way that you want it to, don't use that platform. Yeah. Maybe Wix is the perfect opportunity for you. Shout out to our sponsor, Wix. But if you want to use another tool that works for you, I would say just do whatever you feel comfortable. It's not going to add extra stress to your already stressful job hunt. I think that's maybe the worst thing you could do.
Yeah, exactly, because then you will not apply. That's why, for instance, in my story, I selected PDF format because I really wanted to focus telling the story and putting my visuals together rather than figuring out, okay, where is this website? How should I do it? And if you want, for instance, to customize your portfolio to a position, then a website can be also a bit challenging, right? Because you have one version, what should you do? If you have a PDF or other format that is more easily to share with different links or documents, then you can customize and change it easily. All those things. Yeah.
I love that. One thing I've seen recently, and I want to get your thoughts about a specific platform. You mentioned Notion. You were a huge Notion fan. I've started to see people do Notion portfolios.
Oh yeah, it's been a while. Yeah,
how do you feel about Notion? It's not customizable from a visual perspective, but it's pretty powerful, and you can build stuff and cross-link things and databases and use it. Is that something you explored? I'm curious.
Yeah, I love using Notion for my second brain, organizing, planning, this type of things. The tool has been on the market for a while, also picking up by designers for portfolios. But I must say, I wouldn't say it's the best tool for a portfolio. It has a lot of limitations when it comes to customization, how you, I don't know, organize your text and visuals. And if you forget about this and you just throw everything there, it also can look like it's very easy to share. But I would probably, if I would have to pick between Notion and PDF, I would still pick a PDF because I can, because it's, you can design this better. And also if you, for instance, don't have visual skills, you need to remember to have the proper length of sentences, and people forget about this. Or if you put your case studies or project stories into this database gallery, also make sure to make them bigger because usually people forget and they are so small. Also, the image is usually cut in this preview. Of course, it's very easy to scan in a sense because it's like a very notes-taking thing. It's very like top-down, but it's not very easy to customize. And I'm not so sure if it creates the best experience, to be honest.
Okay. No, that's fair. I think a lot of people out there are considering Notion for that. And I think it's good to know the limitations and understand what you can and can't do and all that stuff. But that said, Notion's what you want to do, and that's what you feel comfortable. I'm sure you would probably agree. Use Notion. Go for it. If you can get it to do the way you want it to do.
Yeah. If you don't have skills, you also will make a crap in the PDF. So that's the case as well. I think you need to verify it yourself. That's what I've been at least observing when I saw portfolios from Notion, that those needs actually don't provide the high experience. But if you can take care of those things for readability, for scannability, it's of course okay. You can share it easily. You don't need to think about some PDF size, format, whatever. This is actually very handy.
I love it. All right. So we have got about 20 more minutes before our time is up today. And I've already had you for a long time. There is like a whole lot of stuff here that we have not covered.
Yeah, I know.
Specifically around like actionable advice on things like that. But we're going to be doing our live event next week. And so I think we'll probably cover quite a bit there. How do you feel about that? Are you okay if we leave a lot of that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would that be all right with you? Okay. All right. Awesome. So before we get out of here, last time we did 5 questions that I ask all my guests to help our listeners get to know our guests a little bit better. You've already answered those.
Yeah, I just remember.
So this time around, I've got a bunch of silly this or that questions that I'm
going
to ask
you.
But before we do that, any closing thoughts? Anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you want to dig into?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think maybe the closing thought would be to be your own boss of your portfolio. I think this is something I tend to repeat quite often to designers because we lack confidence. We tend to follow the crowd, and we need to start believing in ourselves and becoming more self-aware, because it will not only help us with a portfolio in a recruitment process, but I think in general in our careers, how we will be navigating this career, which is no longer linear right now. Don't be afraid to take risk with your portfolio and put yourself out there. Don't think that portfolios are perfect, because they are not. If you would look closely into those beautiful portfolios online, you will for sure notice also some things that are not in place, or things that you, for instance, don't like, or maybe have a different opinion on, which is really normal. So be brave to put it together and maintain it.
I love it. All right. This has been amazing. And Aneta, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited about our live event next week. All right, awesome. I am really excited about our live event. Before we get out of here, like I said, I got some really silly this or that questions.
I'm straight.
And what I normally do is ask the Q&A 5 questions. And then on the live event, when I have people come on the live event, I ask them the this or that questions. This time I'm asking you this or that questions because you came on again. So I don't know what we're going to do for the live. I think actually for the live, we probably won't do anything, because I feel like we'll have so many questions about portfolios that will take up the whole time. So maybe it's good that I'm asking you these this or that questions now. All right. So I've got just 20 simple this or that questions. The first thing that comes to your mind, don't think too hard about it. You don't have to justify it. Just whatever you think. And then that's it. All right. First up, time travel to the past or to the future?
To the future.
All right. Invisibility cloak or the ability to fly?
What was the second?
Would you rather have an invisibility cloak or be able to fly?
Okay. Be able to fly.
Be able to fly. I think so too. I feel like a cloak would be cool, but I could just fly to wherever I want. That'd be amazing.
And look from above and see what's going on
there.
there.
Take some pictures. Oh man, that'd be amazing, huh? All right. Space travel or deep sea exploration? Which would you rather?
Deep sea exploration. I am the water girly.
You like the water? See, either one I feel like is terrifying for me. Like the idea of being in a submarine scares the crap out of me. Not because it's like a small space, but because like at any point it could just crush me and I would die.
Yeah.
But even in space, same kind of thing. Yeah. Like tiny little crack, boom, dead. I don't know. Either one just terrifies me. I'd rather just like safe and sound on the ground. That's where I'd like to be. I don't know. All right. Would you rather be a famous director or a famous actor? Front of the screen or behind the scenes?
Oh, Jesus. A famous actor.
Famous actor. All right. You're okay with all the autographs and things like that? Hassled constantly? That's all right. I think you could do it. Would you rather only eat pizza for a year, every meal, nonstop, 3 meals a day?
Oh, Jesus.
Or never eat pizza again?
Oh, no, I love gluten. That's a tricky question.
Because here's the thing. After a year of pizza, 3 meals a day, you'd probably never want to eat pizza.
Yeah, that's true.
So either way, you'd probably... It's a hard one.
Okay, if I would have to answer to this question from a rational point of view, probably no pizza at all.
Yeah. You'd also gain a lot of weight. I feel like you would probably be miserable if it had you. It ruins it. This is a hard question. Either way, I feel like you're all right. Would you rather live in a world without coffee or a world without music?
A very hard trade of decisions, Jeremy. World without coffee.
Yeah, music would, either one would kill me.
Yeah,
I feel
me too.
like I would just start drinking tea or something. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
find something other
Yeah,
thing. But yeah, I'd have to have I don't know. Because it's not just the coffee, it's the act of going to a coffee shop.
Yeah, it's a
and all that
whole
stuff.
ceremony.
Yeah, it's a ceremony. Yeah, well, that's a great way to put it. I love that. All right. Would you rather have the ability to read minds or be invisible?
Read minds.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. All right. Would you rather have a rewind button or a pause button for life?
Yeah, pause button.
Yeah, that one, I feel like, I don't, did you ever watch Saved by the Bell? Was that big in Poland when you were a kid?
No.
It's an American show. Anyway, it was like a kid's show, basically, but it was like a sitcom.
Yeah.
And the lead character had this thing he could just be like, time out, and he could just pause and just talk and walk around and stuff. Anyway, that question always makes me think of Saved by the Bell. All right. Would you rather be perpetually underdressed or perpetually overdressed?
Ooh.
Underdressed for everything or overdressed for everything?
Oh, okay. I think, I don't know. Yeah, I think in both cases you will be noticed. So maybe overdressed, because sometimes I find it hard to make decisions on what type of clothes.
I think it's hilarious. Yeah, this question is so funny. I just imagine someone showing up to, I don't know, like the Queen's coronation in like t-shirt and shorts or something.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like just showing up like everywhere in the ball gown. Like a fancy hat or something. Just no matter where you go, you're just, I don't know. I love that. I don't know. I think it's hilarious.
It's hilarious.
That would make a really funny movie, or somebody should make that movie. All right. Would you rather design only with Comic Sans or design only with papyrus?
I knew you
the
would
rest of your
ask
life?
about. I think the second, because it's like Comic Sans is still like meh, but Papyrus has something in it. It has more character, I think.
Yeah, I love it. Everybody would think you're like from ancient Egypt
Yeah.
forever. If you just, all right. Would you rather only be able to conduct user research via interpretive dance or haiku poems? Haiku, like 3-line poems.
I know the Japanese one, haiku. Okay, yeah. The second one.
Haiku poems.
Yeah, I lived in Japan, so that was.
That's right. Yeah, so it's funny. I just imagine this one. I need to refine this a little bit more, but it's either like you as a researcher doing the interpretive dance, asking questions, or the participant giving you like responses in haiku poems, or only responding, or is it both where you have to have a haiku poem and they have to repeat and answer your question in a haiku poem? I did some research before. Like I found a website that has like a bunch of UX haiku poems.
Really?
And it's like,
ooh,
yeah, here, you want to read one? This one's really funny.
Yeah.
All right. This is by Edward Liu, by the way. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. But empathy, delight, buzzwords that aren't applied when working with colleagues. I love it. Haiku poems. I just imagine like doing an entire research session in haiku poems. Would be hilarious.
Yeah, this must be
All
hilarious.
right. All right. Next, this is the last question. Would you rather have your designs critiqued by Gordon Ramsay or Simon Cowell?
Oh, gee,
Both very mean.
I know. But I'm from Poland. I can handle quite a bit, you know?
You can handle. Yeah, that's true.
You know what my mom told me when I was a kid?
What'd she tell you? I want to know.
I think the first one.
Gordon Ramsay. I could just imagine him like throwing his laptop across the room. This is garbage. This is trash. Like in his like face red.
Chill,
veins
mate.
popping out of his
Chill,
head.
mate.
All right. Yeah. Simon Cowell's just mean, but like in a very dry way.
Yes.
Gordon Ramsay at least is like very animated.
Yeah, very like dynamic, yeah.
Yeah, although I actually have asked somebody this and they mentioned that Gordon Ramsay actually is like very nice on the kids show.
Oh.
He's like very warm and like helpful and stuff. He's not at all Hell's Kitchen mean, like threatening to kill someone with a kitchen knife. So anyway, I don't think he's ever done that, by the way. All right, Aneta, this has been amazing. Before we get out of here, let everybody know where they can find you. Give yourself a plug. Where can we find you online and your course and your newsletter and all that stuff?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here in your show. I always recommend your show to everyone. It's one of my favorite UX podcasts, just honestly saying this. Where you can find me? You can find me, first of all, on LinkedIn with my name and my Polish surname. Yeah. Secondly, of course, on Instagram, ux.aneta. You can also check out my portfolio course, uxportfolio.co. And yeah, I also have a newsletter, which I sometimes write, sometimes not.
Spread.
No, I don't spam. That's what I wanted to say. It's Be Your Own Design Team. So these are all the places where you can find me.
I love it. Aneta, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
again.
you.
And remember, don't forget to hang out with us next week live. It's going to be a dang old hoot. Get your questions in at beyonduxdesign.com/events. Aneta, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.